So welcome to what I'm gonna call my Casio watch playoffs for 2024. It's kind of like the NCAA March Madness tournament, but instead I got Casio watches. I got my 16 watches here. This is not my entire collection, but I thought it'd be a good variety. And I wanna sort of preview what's to come in the next several videos on this channel, where basically I'm going to match up two watches and sort of bracket them off until I get a winner. And that doesn't mean it's the best overall watch, it's just how the brackets turned out. And it's just something I wanted to do that I thought would be very interesting, and maybe I can do this every single year as I acquire new watches. So I'm gonna preview each of the matchups. As you can see here, a lot of different watches. Each matchup will have its own video and go into more details. By the way, since this is sort of a formal occasion, I thought I would rock the Casio Cartier tank looking watch. Yeah, this is what I made out of two watches and another watch band. It was a mess, but hey, it's working. It works for my small 6¼ inch wrist. And so before we get started, I just want to say that I am very thankful for all the watches that I have, and that this is very subjective. This is based on my small wrist, but I thought it'd be interesting for other people to kind of just hear my thought process when it comes to watches, particularly when we try to match them up one versus one. But I love all these watches, and I'm thankful that I have them all. So let's start off with the first matchup, and this is a very interesting matchup. We got the MTP 1302, or the Tiffany blue Casio that everyone was so excited about, up against the Lineage LCW M100. And by the way, I've made videos on most of these watches, so if you're looking for like reviews or my thoughts on them, you can watch that there. But to open up this sort of tournament, this is a very interesting matchup because you got the ultra aesthetic. I think this is probably one of the nicest aesthetically looking watches. Again, not a big fan of the fluted bezel, but the color that carries this watch. So you got that, plus you got the online social media hype, versus what I think is probably just overall, it's one of the best watches. I mean, it has solar, it has multi-band 6, it has sapphire glass. It's pretty small, relatively speaking, to other watches. It's under 40 millimeters across. It is just sharp. This pretty much has it all. So it's gonna be a very interesting matchup to see these two go up against each other, because you really got the hype and you really got the aesthetics. More, I guess you could say, the outward appearance versus really the internals and just a lot of practical features. So I'm looking forward to thinking about these watches, matching them up, and just seeing how they go head to head. Now the second matchup, and these are very, very different watches. You got the digital versus the straight up analog. Right here I got the GMD S5600. This is the small square. So this isn't like your typical 5600 square. This is the women square. I got this one because I thought it would fit my wrist better, and it does. Again, I got a small wrist, 6¼ I think this one fits a whole lot better. But then you have you got like the analog watch, and at a little bit over 40-ish millimeters, I do think it's a little large for my wrist, but I love the color on it. I like the black with the white and of course a little yellow accent. That's really why I got this watch. I also like that the date window, I don't know if you can tell, but the number is pretty oversized, which is nice. I actually appreciate that. Rather than have the magnifier on the glass, I actually end up getting this watch for a really, really good deal. But I do think this will be an interesting matchup, because I went through this analog phase where I just loved analog watches. You know, Edifice, it definitely has so many variety there. But then I'm sort of tail ending my digital G-Shock sort of season. I don't know if you want to call it that. This was probably the one that I wanted the most because I was so curious about it. So it's going to be really interesting to see these two watches go up against each other. They have obviously very different functions and very different purposes. But as a first round matchup, I think you got two very different watches, very different styles, and I look forward to comparing them both. And now on the bottom portion of the bracket, we got the MTD 1053, the Duro, not I want to say wannabe, but it's like the small Duro with the big oversized numbers and 200 meters. It's like the small Duro. the rotating bezel, versus this is the EFRS 107D. I mean, these are so different. It's probably one of the best dive watches that I have because of the 200 meters of water resist. It has this analog display with the date, rotating bezel, color scheme is real nice, versus what I think is one of the dressiest watches. Just aesthetically, you got the screws on the bezel, good size for my particular wrist. You got a great dial, nice colors, sapphire glass, date window. I mean, there's so many good things about this particular watch. They have very different purposes. Obviously, this is more for like the beach. This is more for a pool. This is gonna get wet. Well, this one could also get wet, but I would not take this to the beach. This is gonna be more for dressier, maybe, you know, this is gonna be like a good work watch. So you got two very different watches, and I think they both excel at what it is that they do. And the bottom of the bracket, this is also a very interesting matchup. We got the GM S110 G-Shock watch. This is like the women's one. It's a smaller version of the 110 watch. Looks almost the same. It's just a little bit shrunken down. And they don't have the day of the week ticker. Instead, they replaced it in the digital display here on the bottom. So, that's okay. Pretty nice watch, very shiny, very flashy. Versus the MQ24, everyone's favorite minimalist watch, no date window. I don't even know what it's made of. Plastic, acrylic glass. I mean, this is as simple as it gets. So you got a very like high-tech watch right here, very flashy, very shiny, has all the things that G-Shock does. And then you got the simple one. And again, making videos about these watches. This watch, I didn't get it at first because I thought, oh, it's so cheap, and it is cheap. But when I saw my brother and my mom have this watch, I got to try it on. I was like, I could see the value in a watch like this. So it's gonna be interesting to compare these two and really just talk about them in contrast to each other. Now, in probably what I think is the toughest first round matchup that I have, it's GMA S2100. This is the classic resin Casio oak, but it's a small version. This is like the women's version, all pink. Don't let that fool you. Versus the EFS S570. You know, double S's on that one. This is, to me, if you want to talk real Casio, this is like the real one, all metal, versus the sort of imposter. Not really, but we're talking Casios here. I mean, come on. This has the metal on it. This is all the resin. I think this matchup will be really good because size-wise, they're about the same, which I was quite surprised because, you know, you're talking like a full metal one here versus, again, this little resiny one. I'm really glad that I got the smaller version. I tried on the I guess, traditionally men's version, the larger version of this. I just didn't like it. It kind of fit, but again, I was questioning whether it actually fit my wrist, which means to me, too big. So I'm glad I got this size. This is the size for me. It has all the things that the other one does, just in a smaller case, and this one just happens to be pink with what I think is a pretty nice light. Solar, sapphire glass, just solid construction. I got the international one, so they come in, I think, 3 variations. I think they're all nice. I particularly like the blue one, but decided on this one, so this brownish gunmetal with a gold trim on it. I think this looks really good. This is what I think people think of when they think of Casio, but in my opinion, if we really want to get to it, I think this is probably more what people would consider a Casio. Again, I don't really get the big deal of trying to be a Royal Oak watch. We're buying Casios here. But if you're gonna go with the octagonal design, between these two, I think these are better, especially when you put in the conversation the S108, which I really don't like that watch. I know it comes in the Tiffany blue colors and the white and all the wonderful colors. But when it comes to size, when I tried that on, it's not even close to this one. And if I had to pick between that and this, I'd pick this one every single time. Now moving to the bottom of that particular bracket, we got 2 very different watches. Continuing with the G-Shock, we got the GA2300. This is the first G-Shock that I ended up buying. I was very resistant to buying G-Shock. This was the first one that I got. The X-Men watch, as some might say. I got it because, well, it fit my wrist better than the traditional 2100 Casio. And yeah, the design is a little unusual, but because this was my first G-Shock, I don't think it's that unusual. Versus good old reliable W86, the digital watch. To me, this is the best digital resin watch that Casio makes. Yeah, you can go into G-Shock squares, but for the price, the light, I mean, it's so thin and light. This is better in every single way to me than the F91W, other than like the look, like the nostalgia look. And this watch has the most wrist time of any watch that I own. So you got this new kid on the block, I guess. Very nice, very sleek, versus just, I don't know. This might be, to me, one of the best watches that Casio makes, and it's unfortunate that they stopped making them. But if you can get one, I'd highly recommend this one for any of those digital, if you're looking for like an old digital style watch. But interesting matchup. It's gonna be feature heavy versus just feature enough. So looking forward to this video. Now moving down the bracket to the bottom bracket here, we got the Baby G Frogman, the BGW 100 versus my first Protrek, the PRG 30. And you know, this one is going to be good because I have a special place for this Frogman. You know, I got a good deal on it. I love the icon in the back, the frog icon. And I love the light, little shark on it, the shark animation. I just wish it didn't have Baby G on it. But size-wise, for my small wrist, this is great. This is my go-to beach watch just because it's solid. I mean, size, everything, it is just solid. I'm really happy that I found this, got a really good deal on this particular one, great condition. I hope they bring these back. But speaking of the PRG 30, you know, I was very skeptical on this one, mostly because of the sizing of it. Because, you know, when you look at dimensions online, you don't know how it's gonna fit on someone's particular wrist. And as a Protrek watch, I'm not really a hiker, but I did want the big display. That's what attracted me to this particular watch. And I've used this watch quite a bit. Sleeping with it, I know this is meant for hiking and outdoors and when you need to know, compass and temperature and all that stuff, altitude. But really, I'm not that adventurous. I mean, look at the watches that I have. But that being said, this is a great watch, solar, but really it's the display that I like. Just overall, this is a very nice watch, very practical. And it's finding its way in my rotation in just everyday life. So looking forward to going up against these two. I don't think I'd take this to the beach, but then again, I'm not sure I'd ever wear this outside of the beach. So I'd be matching up a beach watch with basically a hiking watch, but more so becoming an everyday watch for me. And last but not least, at the bottom of the bracket, probably if I had to look, this is probably the weakest matchup of any two watches that, at least for me, I'm just looking at playing. Again, these are all randomized, by the way. This is the Casio A1100 versus the MTP S110. And very confusing because there's a couple of 110 models. But first here we got this digital watch here. This is like a very unique design. The bracelet is great, but just this face is just so unique with the buttons up on the front. It's a pretty small digital display, but I think this is pretty unique. It's metal, which is great. It's not like a fake metal like some of the other ones, like it's a resin metal. This is like the real deal. So I like this. Comes in different variations. To me, the silver one, the steel one was the nicest one. I was considering the black one. There's also a gold one. But to me, this one was the nicest. It's most versatile. And yeah, it's just a very unique watch if you add it to your collection. This, on the other hand, is, well, this is the closest I thought I could get to one of those Seiko divers, because I love the spots for the indices on this watch. It doesn't rotate the bezel, but I don't really need that. But it has the day of the week and it has the date. I mean, come on, that's a great feature. It's also solar. Unfortunately, it did get scratched early on. I had to change the band out as well. The band was a little bit thick for me. But just a lot of really good things when it comes to this watch. And for a while, this was my beach watch. I thought this watch was absolutely perfect, easy to read. It had the diver look, but it sort of fallen off for me as a beach watch, just other watches I've gotten. But still, I think this is a really great watch. It looks good, it's solid, and yeah, you got two, well, primarily weak watches. And when I say weak watches, I just mean watches that sort of fallen off on the tier list for me and out of the rotation. But at the time when I got them, I thought these were great, and I still think that they're great. It just, as you acquire more watches, some of your older watches kind of fall off. Some didn't, but I noticed that a lot of my older watches did, and that has to do with budget and just I guess getting used to them, desensitized to the watch, the excitement sort of fades. So that is the matchups for what's to come in the next several videos. I hope that you enjoyed those individual videos. I'm excited to actually talk about all these watches directly in comparison to each other. This is just all for fun. This is completely subjective. This is just my opinion. I like all of these watches, and I'm just looking forward to when I have to like critically think about two watches and I had to pick one between the two, not amongst all the watches that I have, but just between the two watches. I'm very much looking forward to seeing which one's actually going to beat out the other one and sort of move on in this bracket. So it may not be necessarily my best watch that comes out in the end, but you know, it's just going to be how the brackets work out. But I think it'll be a very good exercise for me to think about the watches that I own. And if I had to choose the one as I'm bracketing and sort of working through the bracket with these watches, I'm very curious. I don't actually know which one will be the last one standing, but I'm curious. I really like Casio watches. Again, this is just what I have going towards the end of 2024. There'll be more watches probably in the future as I build my collection more. And those will be thrown in and maybe I'll have a bigger tournament. I don't know. But trying this for the first time, I'm just doing this for fun. And I thought it'd be interesting to share as I kind of go through this self-discovery process on watches on my own. So hope you look forward to the videos that are coming up, and thanks for watching.